Hello, good morning still.
Good morning.
It is March 3rd, 2022. I'm Lisa Garrigan and I am interviewing
Anne Elizabeth Duckett.
Elizabeth Duckett. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Very excited to be here.
Okay. Let's start with a little bit about growing up. When and where were you born, and what was your family consist of? Parents, siblings?
Yeah, I was born in Rochester, New York, July 15th, 1959. I am the middle child. My folks had 5 girls.
Oh wow.
And I have long thought my dad is really a saint. I have a sister, the oldest is in Mississippi. I have a sister, Karen, who actually passed away on Thanksgiving this past year. She was in Texas. And I have a sister here in Rochester, one in Batavia, and obviously I'm in Canandaigua.
So, wow. So, are you close to them? I mean,
The 2 younger sisters, yes. I don't have much contact with my older sister, Kathy, who's in Mississippi.
how big of an age range is there there?
You know, between most of us, oldest, youngest, maybe 3 to 4 to 5 years
Okay.
as the steps of, yeah, our ages go. But I am close with my 2 younger sisters, which is nice.
Yeah.
Phone, email, texting, all the things we do today to stay close if we're not seeing each other. But
Yeah.
we try to do that every couple of months at least.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So no brothers, huh?
No brothers, no.
So, what about your parents? What did they do, and are they still with us?
Yeah, my parents are still alive, Joan and Bernie Salber. They live out in Ontario. And, they have quite a busy life, even with having gone through COVID, the pandemic, but have a very busy life. And I think one of the things that I've learned from watching my parents age is to just stay active. I mean, Dad still goes out, stacks wood. They heat the house with wood. They do have electric baseboard heat, but they prefer to heat with wood. And he shovels, and he goes down to the creek. And my mom for a long time was knitting and crocheting, and they have their errands, and read and stay very active. They're always going out to see one of their kids.
Oh, that's good. That's good. What was it like growing up? I mean, you lived in Rochester. Did you go to the Rochester City School Districts?
We did. We grew up on Conkey Avenue, where the avenues A, B, C, and D are located. And my grandmother, Violet Nersinger, really helped raise us when my mom and dad worked. And, we had a huge yard, and my parents had planted white and red grapes. We had a garden, had a swimming pool. There was lush greenery and bushes. In the wintertime, my dad would make us an ice skating rink. We'd play baseball. We had lots of animals, rabbits, and we had a duck named Henry. And, it was almost like a kid's paradise.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Like a kid's paradise. A lot of fun.
Wow. So what did your parents do?
My mom did a number of different things. Dad worked at City Hall for a good while and then got into Kodak, and was kind of on the paper processing side of Eastman Kodak Company, and he would walk to work. We lived then, after we moved from Conkey Avenue to Albemarle Street, so he'd walk down Lake Avenue and walk home. And Mom did a couple of different things. I think she worked in an office setting. She worked with a photography company, but didn't really have one set career path, because with 5 girls, you needed to be available.
You need to be available. That is for sure. So it sounds like you had a pretty fun and happy youth.
Yeah, it was certainly not without challenges. I had a sister, my sister Karen, who passed away, was ill. She had some kidney issues. So that was really quite the focus for my mom and dad for most of my sister's life, until she grew out of that particular medical issue that she had. But yeah, I mean, we traveled, but not too far and wide. Maybe Niagara Falls. I remember Sunday afternoon drives and
Yeah.
those kinds of things. But you stayed closer to home, I guess.
Yeah, the Sunday
Traveling
drives.
wasn't such a big thing. I
Yeah.
think now we want to go around the world and offer so many opportunities to our kids through travel, which is wonderful. But
Yeah, well, back then, yes, the Sunday drive to grandma's house or something like that was, that's what we did.
Exactly.
Exactly, yes.
We'd have dinner around 2 or 3. I always saved room for dessert. Was very close with my one grandmother from England. So
From England, so she came over and.
yes, when she was 7, they moved from Kettering, Northamptonshire, England, to Canada, and then came down through Canada to the U.S. She was 7. Yeah,
What year was that?
let's see, my grandmother was born in 1901, so 1908 or so, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So probably came over on a boat.
Yes, but I don't remember there being many stories told about that, or what that was like for my grandmother to actually take that trip and settle in the U.S., settle in America. I don't remember a lot of family stories about that.
So, I know, that would be interesting to hear, especially as a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So, as a 7-year-old. Was there anything that happened when you were a kid or in your youth that foretells, what you wanted to do as an adult? I mean, did you have something that happened that's like, oh, I really want to get into this, or did you have any idea what you wanted to do as you grew up?
I have always loved books, always loved reading. I think they're truly a prized possession. And I remember reading and learning to read and kind of struggling through words like we all do. And my parents would say, well, if you don't know how to spell it, look it up in the dictionary. And I would say, if I don't know how to spell it, how can I look it up in the dictionary?
No.
And I would tell that to my kids, and my grandkids too now. But that was always fun. But I think the dictionary is probably one of my favorite books. There's so much you could just forever spend time understanding, learning, reading, deciphering. It's a great book.
Yes, that's true. And the encyclopedia.
And the encyclopedia.
Did you have an
And
encyclopedia?
we had the set.
Yes, so did we. We had the set.
growing up.
Yes, 1963, I think our set was. So yes, I read a lot of that. Yeah.
The other thing that always is one of my most fun memories, just kind of being outdoors and loving the outdoors. But for me, I remember, pardon me, early morning, getting up, climbing up on the kitchen countertop. We had a huge window in the kitchen, and just listening to bird calls and mimicking them. And everyone in my family has some kind of North American bird book, the Sibley reference guide for birds, and I'm passing that along to my grandson, who is currently living in Colorado. Mind you, he's only 3, but he loves birds. So it's nice to have those touchstones that you can share.
Yeah, pass it on down.
Absolutely.
Like a tradition. Very cool. Let's see. When you get to high school, what were your plans? Did you have any plans because I mean, we are about the same age, so I do remember back then, some kids went to college, some kids went right to work. So what were your plans?
I think interesting that you remember and kind of think about that, because being aware of that, there were some of my friends that maybe went to community college, some that got married, some that went right into the workforce, banking, secretarial work. I always wanted to go to college, and I always wanted to write. And at the time in Rochester, there was not only the Democrat and Chronicle newspaper, but there was the Times-Union. So I remember whenever I would be downtown, which was quite frequently, my grandmother and grandfather lived somewhat close to downtown, so we would almost every weekend be going down to do some kind of shopping. But I remember, I want to be a newspaper reporter. I want to tell stories.
That's very cool. Did you go to college?
I did. I had 1 year of college, then I got married and started my family. But I started out at community college, Monroe Community College, had a semester there, then I transferred to Brockport, had a semester there, started my family. But for me, that was the one thing I felt that I always wanted to go back and finish. I always wanted to get my college degree. So where I was working at the time, I worked at Rochester Gas and Electric, and I found out that they paid for part of your tuition, paid for certain classes if you could show that it was associated with the work you were doing. I was a department secretary at the time. First class I took when I went back was interpersonal speech communication. Like, oh, that would be good because I worked with, multiple supervisors, multiple staff members, and to be able to effectively communicate certainly served me well. Yeah, so I got my associates at MCC. While I was in high school, I got accepted at St. John Fisher College, so that was always like the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a 2+2 program, got my associates, transferred what I could to St. John Fisher, and at 38 I graduated with my bachelor's degree in journalism with a minor in English. So I could really check that off my list. I was on the road to achieving what I wanted to achieve. A little later in life, but that's okay.
Now, how old were your kids when you went back to school? Because you have, how many, 3?
I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Elizabeth is 42, Adrian is 40, and my son Rawson is 31.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a big thing. I was going through a divorce, and I didn't want it to be a disruption. I mean, I was still working full time. So I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, do my studies, get the kids out the door, school, lunches, laundry, whatever I had to do, and at night continue my studies. So to have my kids fully aware of me going through getting an education, them old enough to appreciate that, I think we've talked about how that was an impact on them and positively impacted them.
Now, did you have to do night school? Because there are, of course, no, online classes at that time.
Not at that time, no, and I did, and oftentimes if I didn't have somebody to watch my son, I would bring him into class with me, and we would sit in the back of the class, and he would be playing with his little cars, or drawing, or coloring, and I had one particular professor who loved seeing my son come into class, and he was so generous with his understanding around that. And every now and again we would get a card, and he would Master Rawson Duckett, and he would just say, "Rawson, I hope you're being very good for your mother. You're doing great work. I hope to see you in class again soon." And it was quite touching.
Oh, that's very nice.
It was quite touching.
Yes. Now, did you have professors that really, besides that one there, that guided you to through your degree? What was your degree in?
With MCC, Monroe Community College, it was an associate's, I think it was just in, I don't want to say liberal arts. It's funny how I don't remember what that one specifically was in. But yes, I had an instructor who was quite instrumental in helping me along the way, kind of fashion things, do exploration. What can you do if you're writing? Do you want to, do marketing, public relations, which I ultimately went into. And I am still in contact with one of my instructors from when I went to St. John Fisher. We're friends on Facebook, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
we're very inspirational for each other at times.
What about the newspaper reporting? Was that just that was a dream when you were a kid, and now you're moved on?
Yeah. So when I got my degree, I was very lovingly, for me, it was like I was going home. I got hired at Monroe Community College, so I was a college relations specialist, and right out of the gate, you're covering news. We each had a beat, so I worked directly with the president at that time. And he was just coming in. He was going to be our new president, so we worked that whole thing. We worked with the media. I also had on my beat the nonprofit side of MCC, so it was the MCC Foundation. So, putting out newsletters, stories that were great to tell about students and programs and all of that. And then from MCC, I went into a different kind of work, not-for-profit, but again, marketing, public relations, storytelling. So not directly at a newspaper, but
But your love of writing still came through.
Yes, and I was so fortunate to have that for the 20-plus years that I worked not-for-profit, higher ed. It was a craft that I really got to hone and have ever since loved doing.
Oh, very cool. What about your kids? I mean, you said that you got divorced when they were younger and such, and you went back to school. But what about, your life with your kids, and how was that?
I've always said that my most important job is being a mom. I don't know of any other three people, much like you mentioned earlier, that you really enjoy spending time with. And they're all different, and they all have different interests, but the commonality there is that they all feel that they have a purpose to do something pretty remarkable in the world. And it's wonderful to see them all together. It's wonderful to be supportive of them in their own right and who they are. I mean, everything from Eastern medicine, Western medicine. I have one who's got her PhD in speech-language pathology, and she's a lactation consultant and a doula, and just starting her own practice. She's worked with everything from the geriatric population with swallowing disorders, feeding disorders, children with autism on the autism spectrum. My younger daughter, very, very spiritual, a Reiki master, yoga, sent herself to India when she was 22, paid for a 2-week trip. She studied Ayurvedic medicine. And my son is an interesting combination, very spiritual also. So when we're together, it's just this incredible joy and vibration and just wonderful time spent together.
I bet the conversations are pretty amazing. I mean,
They're pretty interesting.
So, I mean, everybody's doing something interesting and exciting and talking about it. So that sounds very cool. Very cool. Let's see. Did you guys travel? I mean, because they are all over the place. So did you guys? That's okay. So.
We have. When my son was 10, well, what led to this trip abroad was that my daughter was a foreign exchange student, my daughter Adrian, my youngest daughter, and she spent the summer in Rennes, and wonderful experience. Extremely homesick in the beginning, but toward the end, a wonderful experience. And so then we invited Lucille Angouchard from Rennes, France, to spend a summer with us. And we just all became very close, and it was probably one of the highlights of all of our time together as the kids were developing and, self-discovery. So we took a trip with the 3 kids, and it was planes, trains, and automobiles for sure. We went over to Paris, and we got to meet the entire Angouchard family, and we did everything from, traveling the countryside, and we spent time in Paris, and the girls had some time on their own, and we took my son, again, he was 10, and we would visit different chalets and It was quite a wonderful time, yeah. We did Disney Paris, but
Well, he's 10, so you sort of have to.
it had to, yeah.
So, now, have you traveled with your children as adults? I mean, not just going to visit them, but have you actually gone and, well, let's go to the Grand Canyon with my son as an adult? Have you traveled at all with them as adults?
We have had some trips, because my oldest daughter is in Maryland with her 3 children. You know, our life quickly became, where they are, we are. And, you know, we've traveled around with the kids. I mean, we've gone to Vermont and we've done family trips. So what we do is typically rent a house and then the adult kids come and they're only responsible for getting there and making a meal for everybody one night. But we have traveled with them. My younger daughter's in Colorado, so my son, my husband, and I went out to see them together. You know, my daughters and I have had a couple trips before they got married together. Yeah, I wish it were more. I
Yeah.
wish it were more.
Because it's like a fun thing too, because they're adults and, you know, you can be more friends now and talk more openly
Yes.
about things and such like that. Yeah, that's always
Yes.
nice. Now, you mentioned grandchildren, so I've heard of 4 so far. How many, you have just 4
We have
grandchildren?
5.
5 grandchildren.
We have 5. They're 11, 9, 8, and we call them cousin twins because my daughters were expecting at the same time. So the boys are 3 and they're 11 days apart. One was born in Colorado, one was born in Parkton, Maryland, and I literally remember my oldest daughter, it was her 3rd child, calling and saying, "I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go early. I'll try and wait. When do you think you can get here?" So my plans changed pretty quickly. And they got me out to Maryland in about an hour and a half time from when my youngest grandson Wade was born. So, yeah, it was just, what a time to be a mom. To have both my daughters at the same time expecting, and all the stories and how everybody is doing, and then the delivery, and it
And
was.
they both had boys, so they will grow up together and.
Yes.
So.
And
well,
happily, my daughter and her husband, the Colorado family, is moving back. They're driving back at the end of this month, and they're looking for a home in Vermont.
So everybody will be on the East
East
Coast
Coast,
now.
yes.
So that will be nice, so it won't
It
be.
sure will. It won't be so far away. No
So-
flying.
You won't have to fly, so maybe you
Yeah.
can get together. Do you guys do get together like a tradition of, you know, Thanksgiving or over the summer or something like that?
We do. We certainly do Thanksgiving. My daughter will come up with her 3 kids. It's a big thing for her. And then back again for Christmas. But, you know, that's changing too because the kids want to be home for Christmas. So we've almost every year either gone down there. You know, it's funny to kind of navigate all of that with my mom and dad who are 88 and 87, and then my sisters and nieces and nephews. We've all been very close for the holidays, and then, you know, in our minds, it's not really a date on a calendar. It's what you bring to the celebration, and so, you know, Christmas can be 2 days before or 2 days after.
Exactly, it's gonna
Yeah.
have to be because, you know,
There's
so
a lot of
many.
moving parts.
Yeah, there's so many people to love.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's right.
that's
That's a
the-
good way to put it.
So,
Yeah.
let's see.
And you know, we do get together during the summertime. Sometimes we'll have the 2 older grandkids with us for a week. Maybe they'll go to Vermont with us. We have a timeshare in Vermont, so yeah, as often as possible.
Yes. Now, what are you doing now?
It's interesting because, you know, I had 20 years in marketing and public relations, and in 2012, I opened my own small business. I say that I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I've had about 14 business ideas, but the one that really came to fruition was a cut-to-order farmstead and artisan cheese shop, which I had in the South Wedge in Rochester for 3 years. So we closed the retail side of that, and again, storytelling, inviting people into the shop to tell stories about the cheesemakers, which is just a love of mine. So then I got into catering and events and wine and cheese classes with my counterpart. She does the wine, I do the cheese, and then COVID hit. And we were poised. We just put together a calendar every other week. We were doing set to do classes.
No.
So then I thought, well, everybody else is using the term pivot, so I started doing online classes. Definitely was not the same. I started doing more writing, so I was doing freelance writing for a couple of magazines. And I had a couple of my own projects. I'd taken a memoir class and I had taken a creative nonfiction class, so I was kind of blowing the dust off of those projects. And then my husband and I moved last year from Rochester. We downsized, moved to Canandaigua. We've been here for 8 months. We love it. The people here are absolutely just wonderful and friendly and helpful. It's a great community and a nice change from a community where you're not necessarily as integrated as you are in a small community like this. So, yeah.
So the cheese shop, so is there anything that's going to be happening with that? Or is that still an online presence, catering?
I catered a wedding last fall, and it was wonderful. It was for 60 people, and it was on a lake and in a barn. It was just a beautiful setting, and I enjoyed that. I don't want to do catering for larger numbers. I mean, that was very manageable. But to be honest with you, my sister's passing had such an impact on me. I've kind of dabbled in a lot of different volunteer activities. I was a Meals on Wheels volunteer. I was a hospice volunteer. And I have signed up to do an online class for end-of-life doula training, which is a huge departure, but still storytelling. Still storytelling. So that starts next week. I'm working on a new business model for, my business has been called Little Blue. So it was Little Blue Cheese Shop. Now I had morphed into Little Blue Catering and Events. And now I'm thinking about Little Blue Goat Therapy.
Goat therapy.
Yes.
Yes. Well, goats are very cute. I mean, you see them.
They're extremely cute.
Those little kids are cute. So.
Yeah, so I'm working on a business model for that. I'm probably going to be incorporating some of my daughter's business interests and her strengths and my son's. I'm going to be getting certified in Reiki. So a lot of what I'm doing talks more to what I think is my next chapter and my purpose. And I'm thinking to myself, my next chapter will be my best chapter, because it's really going to be an opportunity to provide care and comfort to other people.
And it'll be a combination of all your work and
Yes.
all the things you've learned over your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and using the strengths of your children to
Mm-hmm.
help other people. So.
Yeah. We've loved working together in the past on different projects, so I'm so excited about what we'll be creating together.
Very interesting. So let's see. So why did you do do cheese? I mean, because you said you started a cheese shop. Why? Is there?
Yeah, my husband and I love to travel, and when we would travel, we've been to Europe a couple of times. But even, for instance, we had delayed our honeymoon, and we went to California for 2 weeks, and I have always loved food. I've loved to cook, and we found that the more we would try new recipes, we would elevate the recipes, you would elevate the ingredients, and I'd never heard about so many cheeses before. I mean, 4 sisters, not a lot of money, my parents, struggling often financially. I mean, I ate Velveeta.
Velveeta, yep. Velveeta in America, that's,
Right. So I just became so enamored, and I remember reading an article that was published in Food and Wine, and I think it was in 2002. And I love telling the story because I had no idea what an affineur was. And so they actually referred to this gentleman in France, who I think was second generation, as the cheese pope. And he is an affineur. And so he works with cheesemakers, takes in their cheese, and ages it to perfection. and then turns around and when that cheese is ready, distributes it to 5-star restaurants throughout Paris. And I'm like, that's fascinating.
So he's a cheese ager? That's his...
He's a cheese ager.
Hmm.
Yes, and that really resonated with me. So as I was traveling around, food and wine, and where do the locals buy the best baguette, or where do they go to get chocolates, or what's their market experience like? Then I started going to fancy food shows and other food-centric kind of programs, and I just loved it. So I found out about a cheese making class. It was a 9-day intensive at the University of Vermont, and that was in 2011. And after that, was like, I have to open a shop because my husband didn't want to wake up with goats, so I knew I wasn't going to be a cheesemaker. But my brain also doesn't work that way. I mean, I can follow a recipe, but when you know what goes into cheese making, I mean, I liken it to there being a series of dials, and it's time and temperature and the quality of the milk and the recipe and things that go into making that cheese. And every wheel, if it's artisan or farmstead cheese, is different. And that just was so fascinating to me. But I didn't want to make the cheese.
It seems very stressful.
It is, and it's very expensive to set up a good make room. And you have to really love doing that. And a lot of cheesemakers do because it's very isolating. And people who want to listen to the music and rock all day or whatever and get that cheese made and have the responsibility for turning that milk into this beautiful cheese, unless it's industry cheese, you're doing it by yourself. And it seemed a little lonely to me too. I like being with people.
So you sold cheese instead?
Yes.
Good cheese and...
I told a lot of stories.
A lot of stories. You were talking earlier about the history of cheese making.
Yes.
So is that like, are you doing research on that, or are you going to try to do something with that?
I did some research. I was working with a woman on a book, and her concept was history of New York State cheese making. And there had been a history done on New York State cheese before. And as much as I love history, that wasn't what interested me. So yes, I've done presentations and have kept it to what happened in New York State. And yes, I like it, but I have a different kind of cheese book in mind.
Do you care to elaborate, or are you going to keep it,
I think I should right now. I'll keep it under wraps. I'll keep it under wraps.
That's okay. Not a problem. Don't want anybody to steal that idea. So, very cool. So, now we talked a little bit about where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years. You do the doula thing you would like to do, or what else?
I just did, my daughter called it mind mapping. So I took what was up here. I'm a very visual person, and I created kind of a new business model. And so I always feel comfortable talking about my 3-legged stool in any kind of business that I do. And so, it's end-of-life doula, care and support, it's Reiki, which ties into that.
Now, Reiki is with
Energy.
Just the energy of...
Right. Energy healing. You can do it with animals, you can do it with humans. There's a lot of animal therapy now includes Reiki, horse, dog, cat, So yeah, end-of-life doula, Reiki, and then goat therapy. So for me, the goat therapy would come in where I have a healing space. My daughter and I are talking about what this model will look like. And you can come in and do goat therapy, and you can paint, you can have your little friends frolicking around, you can come and learn about goats, you can spend time with them. They are really loving animals, so we'll see.
Oh, sounds very interesting. Let's see. Let's just do a couple general, who are you kind of question.
Oh, fun.
What's the most daring thing you've ever done, and why did you do it?
The most daring thing I've ever done was probably commit to finishing my degree while I was going through a divorce.
Yes, that seems like a lot of work, and so.
Mm-hmm.
But it all worked out, right? So,
Very.
and your kids probably
Yes.
are,
Yeah.
know that they can, if you could do it, they could do it.
Right, and I was so close, and these are, kind of the things that go into decision making. Very close to going bankrupt. My ex-husband was stalling on any kind of child support. I would shop at a grocery store further away than closer to home. I had food stamps, and those are the kinds of things that I think create the fiber of who you are, and those are examples for your grown kids. Like, you could do this. You
Yeah.
could do this.
Now, do you ever think, because you're talking about, going to different stores and stuff like that, because I grew up with, parents that grew up very poor. So I have certain things that, like, I won't spend money on this, or, being a little cheap, as my kids like to say. So I'm just wondering, do they have tendencies to do things that it's like, oh gosh, I wish I had, not been something, so that my kids didn't,
Mm-hmm.
take that to heart as
Mhm.
much as I thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I have two that are minimalists, and they're very frugal. I have another daughter my oldest daughter, who really believes in quality, and it's not quantity but quality, so the spending is different. Yeah, it's interesting to see how that has impacted them. I think if they believe in something, if there's value around it, whether it's taking a class, they're all also very entrepreneurial. Starting a business, investing in something, I think they all give it a lot of thought, which is a valuable lesson.
it is a valuable lesson. So, because every once in a while my kids are like, oh mommy, you're so cheap. And it's just like, yes, but.
I learned a lot about managing money, which I think laid the groundwork for having had my own small business. Yes, that was extremely valuable for me.
So, yeah. Let's see. If you could choose to do anything for a day, what would it be?
I would probably line up a number of remarkable individuals to sit and talk with.
Okay, well that's my last question. Who would you like to have dinner with and have a conversation from any time? I mean, anybody. Who would you like to talk with? You can,
My father is a genealogist, and he has said that we are related to Joan of Arc.
Oh.
So I'd like to know French. I assume she spoke French. And sit with her. She'd probably be at the top of my list. I probably would lean more toward women.
Yes.
Lean more toward women that I would want to sit and have a meal with.
Is there anybody else that you would like to have a meal with that you can think of?
Probably my grandmother.
That's true. Now, that made me think of one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What would the dinner consist of?
Oh, well, if it were with my grandmother, we would have a traditional English dinner, which is what we typically do every Christmas Eve. So as she would say, well, it would be a bit of roast beef, and, you'd probably have some green vegetables, Brussels sprouts, which we do, rice pudding, which we do. So it probably err on the heavy side.
So, what about cheese?
Oh, pretty much anything goat. And my personal favorite is blue cheese.
Well, of course, blue cheese.
Blue cheese, yes.
So, let's see. let's talk about the most recent historic events. I mean,
Yes.
COVID and, I mean, Ukraine is very big now, I'm not
Yes.
sure. What do you think the historic implications are, like in 5 years? Will we be talking about Ukraine, or will that be, you know, something like, that was a big turning point, do you think? I mean, do you have any opinions about that?
I think to see the passion, first of all, I think we're so fortunate in the United States. We've got a great neighbor.
Mm.
We don't have to worry about very much of any of that. My concern is truly to see what can happen if this continues to move west, outside the confines of Ukraine. But it is also nice to see that the world is, though it's as small as it is as strong as it is with allies. And I think for Ukrainians, there will be no going back, but again, hopefully even stronger. And it's probably one of the most disheartening, unfortunate things I think any of us could have imagined happening, to see this unfolding
Yes,
in our lifetime.
yes. But, I mean, you've mentioned like the Ukrainians themselves are very stalwart in their defense of their country, but they also, I have seen, very compassionate
Yes.
towards
Yes.
Russians that they have, you know,
Yes.
either captured or they have surrendered. So, and all the other countries and people are very much supporting Ukraine, so I have hope there.
As do I, and I am amazed that in this day and age, one individual is really orchestrating all of this pain. And
Yes,
it's, yes.
it is a sad state of affairs, that's true, that's true. Anything else you would like to share?
This is my first experience with doing an oral history, and I want to thank, first of all, Wood Library in Canandaigua for bringing this wonderful workshop to our attention and being able to do this, and of course Ontario Historical Society, which is where we are, and life is too short, and I think we need to capture what we can, the stories, and who knows, when I'm 90, I hope I'll be interviewed by one of my grandkids. I would love that.
Exactly, I know, because all these stories will be gone if we don't write them down or tell them to somebody else.
And I want to thank you too, Lisa. It's really been fun
It
working
has been
with you.
very fun. Yes, thank you.